Okay, let's dive right in. We all kind of know that childhood is important, right? But the actual science behind what happens in the first few years of life is, well, it's absolutely staggering. So today, we're going to unpack that critical foundation and look at the real science-backed strategies that not only protect a child's well-being, but also unlock their potential for their entire life. So, let's kick things off with just one number that really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. 90%. By the time a child is just 3 years old, their brain has already grown to 90% of its adult size. I mean, just think about that for a second. The entire architecture for all future learning, for behavior, for health, it's pretty much built in this incredibly short window of time. So what this really means is what happens in these early years doesn't just stay in childhood, not even close. The experiences, the environment, the kind of care a child gets, it all has this profound, lasting impact. This period literally sets the stage for everything: success in school, self-discipline, even healthy relationships way down the road. It is truly a one-time opportunity. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll dig into why this foundation is so incredibly critical. Then we'll look at the hurdles that can get in the way, the impact of adversity. After that, we're going to get into the powerful solutions, from what high-quality education really looks like to building a proactive culture of safety. And we'll even touch on the surprising benefits of something called risky play. Okay, so let's start with that lifelong foundation. This period of super rapid brain growth, it isn't just about size. It's about connection and capability. The brain is forming these complex neural circuits at a rate that will never be repeated again in life. It's building the literal wiring for everything that comes next. It's this amazing biological process, and it's happening right before our eyes. Now, what's really interesting here is that this isn't some simple checklist. It's a holistic process. Think of it kind of like a tree growing. A child is learning to manage their emotions, build language, and master physical skills all at the same time. A safe, nurturing environment is like the rich soil that lets all these different branches of development flourish together. But what happens when that environment isn't so secure? Well, that brings us to the impact of adversity. See, just like positive experiences build a strong foundation, significant stress can physically weaken it. It can disrupt the brain's developing architecture and cast a really long shadow over a child's future. And when stressors like these are severe and they're prolonged, they can lead to what researchers call toxic stress, and that literally alters the brain. You see, these aren't just childhood problems that go away. The effects can ripple through a person's entire lifetime, leading to a higher risk for everything from heart disease to depression in adulthood. And this quote, wow, it really drives home the sheer scale of this challenge. Poverty, in particular, creates this whole cascade of negative effects. It can impact everything from a child's physical health because of poor nutrition to their ability to learn, all because of the chronic stress that comes from living in an unstable environment. Okay, so faced with these huge challenges, what's the most powerful evidence-based solution we have? Well, it's high-quality early childhood education, or ECE. It's an absolutely critical tool for fostering a child's development, and it can genuinely change the entire trajectory of their life. But what does high quality actually mean? Well, research from places like Harvard points to these consistent elements. Of course, it's about skilled teachers and safe, stimulating environments, but look closer. See that human element? Warm, responsive interactions. That, right there, is the secret sauce. Let's look at a really practical example. This table compares two different licensing standards in California. For infants, notice how the more stringent Title V programs require one adult for every 3 children, not 4. Now, that might seem like a small change, but in that world, it means more direct attention, more responsive care, and a much safer environment for our most vulnerable learners. It's a huge deal. And this whole idea of quality leads us right to a core component: creating a culture of safety. And this isn't just about having a first aid kit on the wall. It's about shifting from a passive, kind of reactive mindset to one of active, intentional protection. So here's the key thing to get. A culture of safety is a shared mindset. It's the belief that everyone is responsible for every single child, every single day. It means you don't just hope things will go right, you actually plan for things to go wrong, and you build systems to make it incredibly hard for accidents to ever happen. So we know the what, a culture of safety. But what about the how? How do you actually do it? Well, the single most effective strategy for bringing that culture to life is something called active supervision. This is the practical, day-to-day skill that prevents the vast majority of injuries in early childhood settings. See, active supervision is not just passively watching kids on a playground. It's an active skill. It means turning supervision into this dynamic process of constant observation, of counting, of listening, and of engaging. It's about being fully present all the time. And it breaks down into 6 really concrete actions. First, you set up the environment so there are no blind spots. Second, you position staff strategically so they can see and hear everything. Third, you're constantly scanning the area and counting the children. Fourth, you're listening for specific sounds that might mean trouble. Fifth, you learn to anticipate what a child might do next. And finally, number 6, you engage and redirect them before a problem even has a chance to start. So just imagine a playground with 2 teachers. We'll call them Maria and Yasmin. They don't just stand together and chat, right? No, they position themselves at opposite corners to get full visibility. They're constantly counting the kids in their zones. And when Maria sees a child start to throw sand, she doesn't wait for it to hit someone. She moves closer to anticipate and redirect that behavior. That right there is active supervision in action. All right, now for our final concept, and this one might challenge some of the ways we traditionally think about safety. We've talked a lot about eliminating problems, but what about risk? Well, it turns out there's a crucial difference between a risk and a hazard, and allowing for some risky play is actually surprisingly beneficial. The old way of thinking was as safe as possible. The goal was to eliminate all risk. The problem with that? It can actually hamper a child's ability to develop their own independence and judgment. The new emerging philosophy is as safe as necessary. The goal here is to eliminate hidden hazards, like a broken railing, but to allow for manageable risks, like climbing a structure, so children can actually learn to recognize, evaluate, and navigate challenges on their own. So let's bring it all together. Here's the key takeaway. Quality early childhood care is an active, intentional process. It's all about building that foundation for life by creating an environment that is not only deeply educational, but also proactively and intentionally safe, which then allows children the freedom to explore, to learn, and ultimately to thrive. Which leaves us with a final, really thought-provoking question to chew on. How do we master that delicate balance? How do we keep children safe from the real hazards they can't see without protecting them from the healthy, manageable risks they absolutely need to grow into capable, resilient adults?